Good morning, everybody. If you do not hear me, send me a message. I don't see myself. Okay, so welcome today. We will be having our session today that will go mainly through the exercises that you have done. I will remind you later on, I will confirm to you that I would like to keep the session of next week that will compensate a session that we missed. So please remember that we have a session next week. If you have an issue with that, please send me a message. Today we will be going through our exercise. I will go with you through the some of the lecture delivered in session 2 related to COBIT, and I will be going through the exercise and giving you some of the corrections to that exercise. I will also present one or the other result that you have shared with me. In general, the exercises were quite well. I very much appreciated the work that you have done. I think it was quite well done. So we will be going through all that. Many of you have sent to me questions by email. I did not manage to go through all those questions. So if you have any important question to me, send it here in the chat. Otherwise, I will try my best to go through the questions that you send by email and try to answer those. From time to time, or most of the time, I go with you through. I note those people who attended and those who did not attend. There is no specific notes given to that. I'm not going to give you one more quote because I will not quote you better if you did attend. However, for those who attended, if you have any trouble in passing the necessary minimum required for succeeding this course, I will be going through the participation and give you those additional points if I find it adequate based on your participation. Therefore, I have noted carefully who did participate. Okay. I see that most of you have entered. I hope you didn't have any issue with connecting. I did not record. I recorded, Alexi, some of the presentations, but it's mainly for my use. I'm not going to make them available because I only recorded the last one, the before last one, the one related to project management. I can make that available if necessary, but I will check before that. If you require it from me, I will check it with the speakers, because normally I'm not allowed to reuse any recording before I have any approval from the authors. And I didn't mention it to them. The recording was mainly for my checking, because most of the time I was present in the background, but on few occasions I was not present in the background. On the last occasion, I was in parallel, watching you on the large screen behind me, but on parallel, I was lecturing for Deutsche Börse in Germany, the IT management of that organization. So I could hear what's happening, but not more. Okay, so I would like to go on the Trinity chain case study and go with you through the results that we have received. Before that, I would like to go through some of the facts of that case. As you remember, it's a bank that has some issues with its organization, with its IT, and we have seen its organization structure. We have seen the issues related to his management team, and we have seen the issues that happened with their systems. They have put in place a digital transformation organization. They wanted to have a new start for the implementation of their systems, hoping that this will be bringing some of the values to the organization. It is important for them to ensure that whenever they are bringing any improvement, that they identify how much that improvement is bringing benefits, how much are they doing what is necessary to review risks, and how much they are managing adequately the resources. We have mentioned that, if you remember. We have also looked in the class at those cascades. What are the enterprise goals that they are seeking to have, and what are the alignment goals? This will be the topic of an exercise that I will be asking you to do in the coming week. You probably remember that we have mentioned that the enterprise goals are related to series of activities. Those are generic requirements, generic goals, generic expectations from what an organization may require in 4 domains: in financial, internal, customer, and growth. The idea is that we identify not necessarily those generic domains, that we identify the effective domains. And if we need to inspire, we come to those generic domains. I have done that exercise recently in an organization, and we went through those domains to identify if what they are doing is effective. And we found out that many of those people involved in IT and involved in implementing the digital transformation were not at all aware of what are the business objectives of the organization. So they have been implementing various things and hoping that they know what they needed to focus on, but they did not. As a result, they did not neither identify from the alignment goals what is required from them. I remind you that alignment goals are related to IT activities, while enterprise goals are related to what the enterprise objectives and strategy is related for. The enterprise goals may be related to enterprises strategy, which means that we need to, as you saw in this case, expand to new markets, develop new product, reduce the cost, improve our time to market, etc. Or they may be some specific goals related to specific business processes. For example, they may be simply related to implementing an adequate human resources management, or improving the operations of their systems through the implementation of ERP or improved automation to their operation, or implementing better financial services, or implementing a customer relationship management. Those are specific objectives related to their specific departments, or those could be, as I mentioned earlier, strategic objectives that are related to the whole organization. But obviously, strategic objectives that are related to the whole organization should also be defined into specific objectives for each one of the departments, which means that when we talk about alignment objectives for IT, we can also talk about alignment objectives for the human resources department, for the sales department, for the operations or finance department. Because once we have identified a strategic objective for the organization, each department, each activity within that organization should look at how to align those enterprise goals into their goals. Obviously, in this case, with COBIT, we have been focusing on alignment goals for the IT and digital initiative, digital transformation. Therefore, all those generic goals are set mainly for the IT function. However, every organization, every department could have defined its own alignment in their own terms. Ideally, we would have advised them to balance that, not focusing only on the financial aspect, customer-related aspect, internal operations aspect, and learning and growth aspect. If you wish me to repeat the difference between those four, if you wish me to repeat why it is important to focus on those four differently, because those are related to four different things. I mentioned the balanced scorecard concept. I would be happy to do it here. However, I would invite you to read in relation to the balanced scorecard concept. It has been invented in the 90s, and it has adjusted, focused the objectives of organizations into four domains, not to focus only on financial aspects, not to focus only on customer pleasing aspect, not to focus only on how better we can do our job, but also how to evolve and how to be able to adjust to any new situation like the crisis that we are living today. Many organizations will not be able to overcome this crisis because they have not a structure. They probably have made too good their internal operations. As a result, they are not flexible, agile sufficiently to be able to adjust to a new environment.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ataya. I've got some messages from people that are trying to enter.
Yes.
Yeah.
I see that. Thank you very much. Sorry for those who have been trying to enter. I didn't watch the right screen. I was explaining the concept of balanced scorecard. Thanks, Josephine, for informing me. I will continue. I just presented the concept of balanced scorecard and I invited you. I invited the speakers to those who were waiting to look at the concept of balanced scorecard that I put in the chat. If you have more information, if the concept requires you to share to ask me for additional information on the balanced scorecard, it is a wonderful tool that I will be happy to present in the coming week. I remind you that I propose to keep the session of next week to compensate for the session that we have missed during the crisis, the start of the crisis. So I will propose that we see each other next week. Sorry for the 8 o'clock wake up next week, but I think it would be quite important for us to go deeper into COBIT and share with you the information that I still need to give you in relation to those processes that we have been discussing on the session 2. As I mentioned earlier, today we are going through the session 2 mainly, and mainly before that to the exercises that you have been doing. I'll continue rehearsal of our session, and I may come back to it later on. I will come back to this one at the end of the session today. This one, if you remember, are the different management objectives of COBIT. I remind you, COBIT is control objectives of IT. It's called by coincidence COBIT 2019, no relation with COVID-19. They invented that name because it was created, this version was created in 2019, and the last version was called COBIT 5, was created in 2012. Before that, it was COBIT 4 in 2004 or 05. The COBIT is control objectives of IT, is related to all those management objectives and governance objectives that are related to organizations in managing the IT. I remind you that when they invited management practices for enterprises, they invented the finance management, operations management, human resources management, marketing management, sales management. It helped very much the organization to streamline, to focus their activities on those essential processes. Similarly, in the 90s, they invented this concept that found that there are also many processes that are necessary for the IT activities, many activities that were seen as black boxes and are probably seen as black boxes today by many managers. Many senior managers are not able to understand anything beyond the fact that this is IT, so this is not for me. I'm too old to understand what we are talking about. Therefore, you can play a major role within your organization, within your future organization, in order for you to guide those people as well, the senior management as well, management in general, in order to explain to them the differences between the various processes in IT, in digital operations, digital strategy. And funny enough, you will be also able to guide not only the management and operations, but you will also be able to guide the technical people, because many of your future colleagues, should you work in an IT department, will be not even aware of those different processes. So they confuse the problem management with incident management. They confuse strategy with project management. They confuse IT change management with systems development. So it is essential that you try to understand what we are talking about, and I will probably go through them if you have time today or on our next session, in order that you will be able to understand them better. I remind you that they are structured into 4 domains for the management and 1 domain for the governance. The domain for the 4 domains for management are structured into planning, align, plan, and organize, number 1, 2, 3, 4, under 14. The one for building are structured into build, acquire, and implement, everything related to change, to implementing change, to applying some modifications to the organization, to its IT, to its processes. And the other one is related to running, operating. It's called deliver, service, and support. It could have been called operations. And by the way, the first one is called manage operations. The last one is related to monitor, evaluate, and assess. Sorry. And it is going through those activities that are seldom looked at by organization, and yet those are quite important. I will be going through them today or next time. Beyond those different domains and different processes, that ideally I would invite you again to visit and to look at this presentation to understand what is each one about. What is managing continuity, for example? What is managing security services, for example? All those things. It's important that you understand what are those processes about. I will also be going through some of the detailed processes to highlight to you how can we, what would be into each definition of each management objective. I will not include that. It is not included in the scope of this course. I will not expect from you that you would know in detail what is included in this, each definition of each process. I will go through some of them to highlight to you how they are typically structured, but this is beyond the content of this course. Should you be interested, you will be able to download it from Isaka. By the way, talking about Isaka, you may be interested that Isaka.org is an organization that is a research foundation, worldwide research foundation, as well as an association, as well as a certification body that certified organization, certified professionals. I invite you to go there, visit them, and try to get an account with them. It will give you access free of charge to some of the wonderful documents that they have. And if you become member, then you have access free of charge to all the details of COBIT. That is a jewel, really, that you can use in all your career. In some countries, membership is completely free. So if you are a member of some countries, I think in Belgium as well, but I have to check with the president, that will give you access to a professional organization. It will open a lot of doors for you. If it is not free, and then it is very, very expensive. I'm joking. It is 25 euros, I think it was, before I convinced them to make it free. But I don't remember what it is. But if you try to become member, you see if it is free or not. If it is free, jump on it and become member, because as long as you are a student, you are allowed, or you are beyond 25 years of age, if I'm not wrong, you are allowed to get access to everything. And this is really very useful for you. I go back to what we have been discussing. We mentioned that we have all those 4 domains and the 40 domains that are related to those, without forgetting the 5 management objectives related to governance. A management objective, each one of those, is an objective that the organization may have, which means that each one of those is something that the organization may say, it is important for me that, for example, I manage risk. It is important for me that I manage my vendors, that I manage the enterprise. It is architecture, I'm sorry. It is important for me that I manage the projects. Imagine an organization that does not have an adequate project management. Some organizations, obviously large organizations, have to look at everything. They cannot afford missing any single one of those, including those related to governance, because they have board of directors, they have management committee that needs to look at, are we bringing benefits from our activity? Are we looking at risks? And are we looking at optimizing our resources? In many organizations, until recently, they did not look at those 3 essential governance objectives for any senior management, because they said, this is IT, we do not understand IT, we are not involved with IT, we leave IT to the IT people, the digital transformation people, because it's beyond our knowledge. However, many scandals, many catastrophes, many incidents, many hacks, many frauds resulted from an abuse of the use of IT, or the mismanagement of IT, or the inadequate implementation of digital transformation. As a result, we cannot conceive today that senior management would not be abreast, aware, opening the eyes, and keeping control on everything related to the IT activities. 20 years ago, I had to go to New York to sign an agreement with one of the major financial organizations in the world. And they said to me, Mr. Ataya, I don't know if you realize why we are signing this contract with you. And I said to them, well, I could guess. They said, you know what? If our organization fails in, and my contract with them was to help them confirming, certifying the security of their systems worldwide for all their clients, and their clients are banks. And he said to me, and the person was quite old. I think he was in his late 60s, 70s. So I said to myself, oh my God, again, another one who does not know what he's talking about. And he thinks that IT is something, and it's certainly not, and security is something, it's certainly not what he thinks. However, that person was impressive, because he said to me, you know that our systems are used by all the countries, all the banks worldwide. Imagine that our systems are interrupted for 1 or 2 seconds. That will create a catastrophe, because then all our clients will say, oh, we only have one organization, one such organization worldwide. We don't have any redundant organization. We absolutely have to create another one to compete with this one, so we have at least some redundancy in case one of them fail. Because look at it, it's failed for 2 seconds. Then he said to me, but however, if it fails for 2, 3, 4 minutes, then it's not really a problem for us. I said, I'm sorry, what are you talking about? He said, yeah, because at that time, the world economy will collapse. It's not any more problem for us, but for everybody. So he said to me, you know why I'm not sleeping at night? And the reason why I wish you to take over and sign this contract today, because then I would like you not to sleep at night, and I can start sleeping adequately. Very funny. It was a day that I didn't really sleep a lot, because on Wednesday they mentioned to me that I have to meet with them. And I said, okay. And the only flight I found is on Friday morning. And the meeting was on Friday at noon. So I traveled on the evening, I mean Friday morning, Thursday evening, to arrive there on time, and then came the same day. So it was 24 hours without in the plane. So this is a story why it is essential for us to identify management practices for IT, digital, security as well, and to ensure that we can bring them, highlight to them all those processes, management objectives that are required for them. Imagine that one of those organizations are not aware that availability and capacity management are essential for the organization, BAI 04, and they did not put in place everything that is required for them to manage those operations. And they said, okay, we have good IT suppliers. If we have a problem, we call on them and they will come and implement systems on the next day. Well, it never happens that way. And there are many organizations that lost their operations, that couldn't function for many weeks, because there are always a small detail. There is always a small detail that prevents us from having everything up and running. We build systems day after day for years. We are not going to replace those systems if they fail in one day. We have really to start build everything with adequate configuration, with adequate connections, sometimes in different locations. So back to our discussion. Each one of those management objectives require us to ensure that we have put in place the necessary management components. And we will be looking at management, at the governance and management components. Management components, probably you remember when we mentioned them. If I need to improve on my capacity and availability, if I need to improve on my enterprise architecture or my project management or on my security, any one of those management objectives for IT and for digital activities, if I need to improve on any one of them, I better go and look at those different components of governance. And if there are 2 things that you should remember from this course, well, 3 things, I would say the first one that you should remember is obviously the components of management and governance that I will be mentioning to you about. I would need you to remember those processes and understand them. And I need you to remember and understand the cascading. So those are really the 3 domains that are important for me, because they will allow you to understand, for those who just arrived late, it will allow you to understand how to identify enterprise goals and objectives, translate that into alignment goals and objectives, and based on that, try to identify what are those governance and management objectives that are required from you. For example, in that situation, in the situation of our exercise, you identified for me some of the drivers and some of the enterprise goals and some of the IT issues that we have. We identified that they have some problem with compliance. They have some problem with working with vendors. They have problems, etc. So what we have found out is that based on their business goals and strategy, the alignment goals that they needed to implement are related to improving the time to market, like some of you mentioned to me, improving their flexibility, improving their delivery, improving their security and their compliance. And once we have understood those management objectives, those alignment objectives, we can look here and identify which one of those is important for me, which one of those is essential for me to implement. I need to improve on MEA 03, monitor, evaluate, and assess. I need to improve on APO 10, which is manage vendors? Do I have to improve on BAI 11, manage projects? All those are important questions that domains that may come down as those important ones. Once we have identified those management objectives that need to be improved, that need to be at a better maturity level, then we look at what are those components that we have to improve. In some situations, it is simply because we did not have adequate organization. We do not have somebody accountable, responsible. We didn't involve the adequate people and ask their advice. We didn't communicate to our suppliers what we really expect from them, etc. So organization structure is important. And in many situations, it's because we have inadequate organization that we are in trouble. In some other situation, it is because we have inadequate processes. Imagine every time I launch a new project, if we do not have adequate process to launch, to conduct, to complete, and to finalize and deliver the project, if we do not have a method to do that, we have to reinvent the wheel, to improvise, to develop from scratch, to invent new methods in order for us to accomplish tasks that is probably much easier if we knew exactly how to go through it. If I need to develop an application, if I start by looking at the process, is it agile development? It is a classical development. If it's classical development, have I been doing enough adequate analysis to identify what am I requiring? If it is requiring a complex architecture, have I looked at my architecture, etc., etc. So the process is the series of activities that are required for us in order to run an application. I gave you the example. If I have to make my pizza for the first time, I have no clue how to make a pizza. I have no clue what are the components, and I have no clue how to heat it and at what temperature it should be. If I do it for the 25th time, I can do it adequately well. However, if somebody arrives tomorrow and has never done pizza in his life, then if I left a recipe explaining to him how effectively to do it, he may be able to do probably the same way as me if I define it well. So what we talk about is processes, and for each one of our management objectives, we can imagine that there are some series of processes, and each one of those in COBIT is defined into series of activities and sub-processes. So the process are the series of activities that are required to implement any one of those management objectives and to ensure it is delivered well. Organization structure is ensuring that we know who is involved, who should do what at which time, who is accountable in charge. The principles, policies, and frameworks are important to inform us that sometimes one sentence of principle help us better than looking at many processes and documents. You simply say, try to make it the cheapest, then we focus on not making it sophisticated. If we say, try always to document everything, then we know that we have to ensure that we didn't lose some knowledge because we didn't document it, etc., etc. In many organizations, we have to have information. There are two types of information. There are the information that are necessary for us to conduct our activity. For example, if I'm running a project, I need to have all the data available, all the documentation requiring, defining all the content of the application, the technical structure of our design, the programming, the content, the list of the programs, the code, etc. And there are the second type of information that we require. Those are the performance measurement. Those are all those indicators that I will use in order to explain and check if I am progressing adequately and if I'm, the people working with me are doing what is necessary. So we put in place performance indicators that help us review if we are on the right track. The next component is called culture, ethics, and behavior. If I'm responsible for security, or for project delivery, or for programming, or for continuity, or for strategy or architecture, I may be interested to know if those people applying, helping me, working with me, or applying my instructions, if they are typically aligning with me, or their behavior is nonchalance, saying, well, it's don't insist, don't be very much picky on those rules. Let's see how we can improvise. And they do not respect rules, or they take too many initiatives, positively or negatively. I need to know how typically people behave. So it is not, we are not talking to machines, we are talking to people, and we have to identify if, for example, our users are typically people who may be not reliable, and we don't know what our users are, so we have to build our systems much more solid in order for us to ensure that they can face any behavior. We have to look at skills, competencies, and the people we are working with. For example, if I'm managing a project and I have team that is new people, not with a lot of experience, then I may have different activities, and my maturity will be different. The way for me to conduct that management objective may not be the same. And finally, services, infrastructure, and applications are those technologies that are necessary for me in order for me to be able to implement that process. For example, I manage the architecture of the organization. My activity is to ensure that all those applications, all those operations, all those databases, all those operating systems, all the IoT, Internet of Things that I use, all the tablets and mobiles that I use are within a series of predefined platforms. Otherwise, I will not be able to support all of them. Otherwise, I will not be able to connect the data and migrate one to the other and integrate different applications. Then I have to ensure that I have defined all that. Well, I cannot do that on paper. I need some system, some tool that helps me document, follow up, share, disseminate all those architectural elements, which means that if I really need to manage the enterprise architecture, or the infrastructure architecture, or the application architecture, or the information architecture of an organization, I need to have that inventory somewhere in a system that is manageable and easy to comprehend. Therefore, it is important for me to use some kind of application services that help me. Similarly, if I'm a project manager, I need to use some specific tools in order for me to manage the different phases of the project. If I'm programmer, I need to have the most adequate code editors, syntax checkers, in order for me not to lose a lot of time on that. So tools are important. Unfortunately, application infrastructure and services, I mean tools, are focused on by organization. They feel that they have much more to focus on buying tools before implementing any one of the other components. I typically leave tools to the end. I always consider that all the others are most important. I always see that the symptoms of a bad organization, the symptoms of an inadequate process are organization structure, we don't know who is doing what, principal policies, processes, competencies, and the tools are the last. And typically people start looking at how can we buy a tool so we can resolve all the problems. What I presented to you now, I went very, very fast through those components that are really important, and I invite you within your own activity, or I invite you within your experience in general, whether you are from Solvay and not involved very much in IT, Jerome, or whether you are from any other organization, I will do that. Then look at what are those components that are important and when you feel that one is missing. So Mathieu, my question is, there are no one more important than others. However, in some organizations, you see that people focus on some of them and neglect the others. In some organizations, in some management objectives, you need to have a focus on those that are necessary, and which one it is, it's up to you to identify. In some situations, you see that processes are essential, organization structure is important, principles are important, competences are important. In some others, simply behavior is important. So in some situations, 3 years ago, we had to give you an example because I imagine you thinking, yeah, culture, ethics, and behavior is certainly not the one that we have to start with. And yet, 3 years ago, when we had that GDPR, the data protection regulation from Europe, where we had to implement in all the systems, in all the operations, we had to implement adequate data protection activities. We were facing many organizations. Imagine large banks, large water and utility companies, large transport organizations that did not handle well the data, personal data, which means that we had to ensure that every employee using accessing any customer data is respecting that data. Otherwise, we can have a lot of fines, very expensive fines. So it was important for us to ensure what is the behavior of that organization and what is the behavior of our employees in order for us to adjust those employees' behavior in order that we reach that protection of the personal data. So any one of those 7 components may be important for one management objective. It's really up to you to identify that. What I mentioned, Mathieu, is that, yeah, thank you. What I mentioned, Mathieu, is that sometimes people focus too much on one of them and neglect the others, and yet it is important that we look at which one is important. So what I have done?
I have a small question. So who does assess the most important components? I think that maybe if you're not having the overview, that you can pick a wrong component, no? That you think that that might be the most important or problematic one, while it might be really something else.
I didn't understand your question. Could you please repeat?
So you have the components, and the organizations should pick themselves which one is more important or that could cause problems. But I think it might be different to pick the right components. It might be that a problem is more related to another component that they think it is. So how can you assess it in the right way that you don't pick the wrong components?
Yeah. Actually, if you improve on any one of those, It's not really picking it, it's improving on it. So if you improve any one of those, it may be not wasted effort, but it may be not very efficient effort. And if you select another one and improve on it, it may be much more valuable effort. The question is, most of the time you will be working on more than one. You will picking more than one. You will say, for example, I have a major issue with my suppliers. They are not delivering adequately. Probably I have to improve the competencies of people in my organization dealing with the suppliers and ensuring that the suppliers people are adequate, have adequate competence to those people dealing with us. I may change the process of communication between myself and the supplier that is delivering systems to me. I may have a better principle policies with them, saying to them that you have to report to me on a regular basis and not leave me in the dark for 6 months. I have to have more information on what you are doing. And most of the time, you will see that we are improving on more than one. And most of the time, picking one component, you will do it based on assessment, based on your investigation, based on your understanding of what has been going wrong, what could be the problem, and what component could be improved in order to do that. And that will be a topic that I will be asking you to do for next week, for example. So I don't know if you responded to your question, Josephine, but the question is, the issue is, it is more than one, and typically it depends on what you observed as missing, and based on that observation, you say, why don't I improve this one, and probably that one as well.
All right, thank you.
All right, so what I have done today for those who just arrived, I have done today looking at reminding you that the first thing, important thing that we discussed today on the session 2 was the fact that every organization, not only IT, but everybody should focus on ensuring that we are creating value, benefit realization, that we look at risk, and that we look at resources optimization. We cannot try to get risk zero. Risk zero does not exist, because we should optimize risk. Risk zero for a system is that system that is locked down, turned off, put somewhere, closed, nobody has access to it, and it's not useful. So it's risk zero, but it does not bring any value, any benefit. To bring benefit, we have sometimes to take risks. Those who do not take risks cannot effectively or generally bring any benefit. The question is how to optimize our risks, how to optimize resources, because we can conduct the same activity, we can run the same project, we can accomplish the same result in new systems with minimum risk or with minimum resources or with maximum resources. What is the limit? What is the most optimal resource for that benefit that we are expecting? We may deliver many systems, and most of them may not be required. Which one is really related to our needs? So it is essential for us at any time, as well for anybody in the organization. And typically large organization, the governance bodies of those organizations certainly most of the time focus on those. Therefore, those three are three of the governance objectives in the governance domains, three of the 5 governance objectives. Once we have identified those, we have to look at what are based on those, on the drivers that we have identified as well, and needs as we have done in the exercise, what are the enterprise goals related to our situation, and what are the alignment goals, as I mentioned earlier, and based on that, what are the management and governance objectives. The 3 governance objectives that I mentioned are EDM 2, 3, and 4. I will not mention the 1 and 5 today. Or we may require to look at what are those management objectives that are related to our alignment goals, which means we look at, in the situation that we have for training chain situation, what are those issues that we are having, what are those alignment objectives that we need to do, improving our relation with vendor, improving our compliance, improving our security. Well, then we will find out that while we said that alignment goals for training chain are improving our compliance, improving our relationship with our suppliers, improving our security, then we will look at those governance objectives and management objectives that are probably MEA3, improving compliance, improving relationship with suppliers, APO 10, improving our projects, improving our security, etc., which is APO 13, etc. And based on those, once we have identified that those are the management objectives that we have to improve, then I will go to see one by one of those management objectives. What are those components in our relationship with our suppliers? What typically are those 2 or 3 components that I have to focus on, and why? And this will be the topic that I would like you to respond to on the next exercise, but I will develop that for you and send it to you today. So I would like you for the next and last session next week to work for me on and this is a work that I would prefer you to do alone, that you work on identifying those management objectives that are related to the issues that are at hand, to the problems that we have identified. So I would like you to identify those management objectives, and based on those management objectives, list to me what are the 2-3 components per objective, and give me what improvement we should apply to those components. So this is something I will document today and send it to you. Before I go off to the looking at the exercise, I would like to ask you if you have any question based on this, so I could respond to this question before I go to the exercise. Okay, so I was very happy with the result of your of most of your results. I gave a very positive notes, but don't be happy too fast, because those notes do not have very high weight for the exam, but I will still take them into consideration. But most of you varied from 65% to 95%. Some of you did not respond to all the exercises. So, for example, some of you did not necessarily give me those 3. Therefore, if you didn't have a minimum of 65, then check why you didn't have it, and why you didn't respond to all those 3, or the 0. I did not look yet at the exercise 1. I noticed that not everybody delivered it yet. So I invite you to go through it. However, I'm not very much concerned if you do not deliver it today. If you deliver it, I will be happy to go through it and give you some points. It may be important, but not too high. However, I would be much more eager to have your results of the exercise I'm going to share with you today.
I have some questions about this, because I wasn't really aware that this is counting for any grades. Not that it's, I mean, that it makes any difference in how I approach the homework, but I mean, I could really use some clear communication on how it is graded, maybe some feedback on how we should answer those questions. I mean, I'm a little lost.
Yeah, no worry. First, no worry, because the grading that I will apply to this exercise, as you asked Mathieu as well, is mainly, it will be in addition to the exam, which means that those will help the grades that I will deliver in the exam, will not be combined with them in a way that if you fail in this one, it will be a problem for you. But if you succeed in this one, it will be adding again value. Typically, what I do for the grading of the examination, the presence, those who are present, and those who do well the exercise, this will add points if I consider that you require additional points. So if, for example, you did not succeed, you have an accident during the exam and you failed to respond adequately, I will try to bring you up, bring your grade up based on those, on this historical information that I have from your presence and from your responses to the question. However, the fact that you responded well, the fact that I grade you well, it guides you into knowing, wow, I did it well, or no, I did not do it well. Which means that if you have, during the exam, similar questions, thanks to the grading that I gave you, you will know that you are already well because you have done it adequately. Or if the grading that I gave you now is not good, then you will know that you have to improve, and you have to see why didn't I respond adequately.
Okay, so we'll get the grade for the assignments after the exam or before?
I'm sorry, could you repeat your question?
So the grades for the assignments, do we get it before the exam or after?
Yeah, I spent the day yesterday to correct the exercise 0 and 1, the assignment 1. And I still didn't, it's the first time I do this at the system. So it is, I'm not yet aware how to publish them. So I will try today to find my way and try to publish them.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Okay, Jerome mentioned that we can see the grades on UV. So I invite you, as Laszlo and Jerome mentioned, and please not now because I don't want to lose your attention, but I invite you to look at them in UV. I don't know, Melissa, yet what will be the platform for the exam. I planned that I spend my time next week to identify that, so I can guide you, explain to you before the session of next week how it will be organized. It was not mentioned in the email. I don't know what will happen if you lose the internet connection. I will obviously be finding ways so I will not put you in trouble in case we have a problem with the platform or with anything that can go wrong. I will try for next week, Alexei, to have some example of multiple choice questionnaires. Okay. All right. So thank you for all those questions. Very important question because those are issues I have to address. All right. So let us go through the exercises. The exercise 0, which is really the basic, that's why we called it 0. Based on the previous text, identify business drivers, important business objectives, and associate IT-related objectives that are necessary for those business drivers. So we had to identify what is important for that organization. And I have received many very nice questions, answers. I would like to share with you some of those. I appreciated very well this from Laszlo, Azim, and Gianmarco. That is, I found it well done. I had many that were well done exercises. I really very much appreciate it. So I'm happy with this class, and I think we have excellent people. Or probably it's too simple, so we have to see that in the examination. So what I expected you to do, some people did it better than others. I will try to find one that highlighted the different business drivers, the business, the enterprise goals, and related it one-to-one to the alignment goal, IT goal. It's even better than this one, but I don't know if I will find it now. But I appreciated that many of you highlighted adequate business drivers and adequate related IT objectives. The idea here is that the idea is that we simply identify, if we have a board meeting today, if we have management committee meeting today, and they asked me, I'm the IT manager, I'm the CIO, they ask me, they share with me their issues, their problems, what are their problems, what are their management objectives, or what are their strategic objectives that I really need to align with, what are those issues that are driving the organization. Here we see the compliance. We have to align services to specific countries. We have to create new services. We have to have trustworthy system, etc., etc. Those are the business drivers. And what should the IT do? The IT should put in place some of those improvements. For example, we need to put in place management of the risks related to security. We should put in place continuity of services. We should improve our teams, etc. So those are the types of examples that I'm expecting from you. I will not give you, Mathieu, any responses to the cases, because I don't have any specific words that I would guide you with. What you see here, and I will share with you the different cases that some of your, that most of you responded to me. I think that it is, you did not miss that. Most of you responded by adequate objectives. I may use my own words, but I do not consider my own words much better or much more acceptable. I think what is important here is that you identify those issues. And I think most of you identified them well, and I will share with you what happened. The other question is related to analyze the general organizational environment in which the change needs to be enabled, which means that what are those issues that we have to take into consideration. And in this example, again, I took this one, but I could have taken any one. I was really very happy with most of your answers. So we identified those organizational environment. What are organizational environment? What are those issues that are important for us? Those are related to domains that we have to take into consideration, related to the way we manage our systems, related to the way we have issues, we have problems, related to the technology that we use. So those are all the situations that are in front of us, and we have to be aware of. Again, there is no correct question. You may be more sensitive to one technical issue or one managerial issue, and you may be more sensitive to some other issues, and your colleague may be focusing on something else. I do not consider that there is something important, something less important. My objective, and please be aware of that, my objective is not that you find the right words or you identify the exact problem. I think that this is to be lectured in your different other classes. My objective is that you will be able to express what you identified as important. Now, was that true or bad? Was that true because you are coming from engineering and you focus very much on this one, or from science, or from Solvay and you focus on that other one? Frankly, I'm not very much concerned with that. I'm not concerned that you will make the wrong decision, because if you make today that wrong decision, but you know what the process is, you know what is expected from you, this is much more important. I couldn't imagine that if you say to me, in this organization, in this case, they have absolutely to focus on security. The other one will say on compliance. The other one will say on project delivery. Okay, who is wrong, who is right? It's not the topic. What is important for me here is not to verify or validate your technical capabilities. I'm confident that with time, I'm confident that with experience, and I'm confident that with the use of tools like COBIT or like other frameworks such as project management framework, risk management framework, architecture framework, and there are many of those, in the future you will be able to grasp the adequate response and find the real issue. However, what is important for me, that you see the process, you understand the process, and you define what you observe, that you document what you identified as an issue. Obviously, if you are completely not identifying the issues that are important, I will notice that and I will mention it to you. I think if this is not clear, please ask me additional questions in relation to this one. So, organizational somebody just joined. Sorry for the one just joined. I didn't notice that you have been waiting. Probably it's not a good idea to do a waiting room, because it will force me to every time check who is in the waiting room. It's mainly for security reasons, but since you have the password, it's not as risky as that. So back to our discussion, what I expected you to deliver is that defining that environment, what is important for you, what have you identified as issues that are noticeable within the environment that will impact our decision making. What I also very much appreciated in most of your answers, again, I took this example here, but it could have been any other example, because almost more than 3/4 of the exercises were adequate from the form, and I was looking at the form, not at the specific content as I just mentioned. Most of you identified the adequate stakeholders and explained why. Sometimes we have to focus on some of them for some management objectives. Sometimes we have to focus on others. For example, should we focus on customers because we don't have any leeway on customers? And yet, when we talk at behavior component, we may be needing to look at the customer. So as you notice, it is important for us to look at the different stakeholders and identify what is important to them. And the wake-up call, I appreciated some of them, some others were very well done. Some of the wake-up calls are done in the forms of a letter that you send to the stakeholders or the board, saying to them, you have to be aware that we are in trouble, we have to do this, we have to be aware of that, etc., etc. So I very much appreciated the different result that you gave, and if I try to give some, show you some other examples that I have identified. This one also from Joao and Victor, Joao Marquez and Victor. This one highlighted those business goals and those related IT goals. What is really important for that one? Which means that I can add another column to the right saying, okay, as a result, I need to focus on that management objective. And the exercise I will be asking you to do is saying, identify those most important IT goals related to the most important business goals that are most essential for the organization, and give me the management objectives that should be related to those IT goals. So I would like you to highlight 1, 2, or 3 business goals, related one IT goal that should be focused in priority, and related to that IT goal, identify the management objectives that is required, and give me, I will ask you to give me those components that you feel have to be improved for each one of those IT goals, for those management objectives, I'm sorry. If this is not clear, I will be happy to repeat, but that this will be well documented in with examples in the exercise I'm going to write and send to you today. I will show you other examples that I received. This is the business drivers of Piotr and Samia. And those are the responses that I received for the stakeholders, the wake-up call, and the issues. This one I did not understand very much. So I would invite you to send me any clarification if you wish, Bakali, but it's not important. But I expect you to, based on what we discussed today, that you focus on the next exercise. If you didn't understand, please ask me to guide you in it. This is another example that I also appreciated, having those business objectives and IT objectives. And again, most of you went through those three answers. And most of you sticked it to one page, which is really very good because it allowed me to go directly to understand if you really understood what we are talking about. This is another example highlighting the issues, business goals, and related IT objectives in detail. This one as well. This is the example I mentioned where we go through the real letter sent to the stakeholders. In your next answer, please include your names in the page in the file name. That could help me better relate one to you. Yeah, this one was supported by the word. This is not the answer itself. Okay, so I went through some of those. I gave you, I explained to you what was important for me. So this is another example. And what I will be doing now, unless you have any additional questions related to the exercise, I will go through the next action that I wish to do. I wish to go through example of a specific management objective and how it is described in COBIT. I do not require this from you in the class. This is not a requirement. Therefore, I do not insist a lot on having you understanding this. However, I'm doing it for your own information. And I'm going to share with you an example on how is organized, how is defined in the full document of COBIT, how it is defined. And for that, I'm going to share with you another exercise that I did for another organization. And I will show it to you. I think this is it.
So for the exam, we need to know the content of the cases, or like how to respond to the specific questions, or how will you ask questions about the cases on the exam?
For the exam, it's not this one. Could you please repeat your question, Josephine? I didn't understand exactly what you mean by that.
So we have seen the Trini chain case. What kind of questions will you ask about it? Will you ask something that is related to the answers we just went through, or do we need to know the content? How should we study it?
For the exam, I will go through similar questions as those. And again, it is what is important for me is mainly the way you respond to see if you have understood what it. So if you did not give the same adequate question as me, you did not notice that what is important in that organization is not this stakeholder, is not the senior management, but the supplier management. It is not a problem for me. Actually, it's not really checking your technical skills. My objective is that you can justify your answer and explain why did you respond that way. So it is important for me that when you deliver something, when you answer it for the case, you try to make me understand the logic behind that, like most of you did in those exercises. So what I expect from you is that you may be completely wrong, but if you can justify how you came to that logic, it will be sufficient for me and I will be happy. Because what is important for me is that probably you were not very sensitive and I didn't appreciate adequately this case, but you know how to do it. You know how to identify what is important and you explain why did you identify what is important. So in the future, I'm confident that you will be able to have a better appreciation, and with time, with experience, you will even have much more appreciation. But what I need you to master is the fact that you know how to do the evaluation, how to do how you go through identifying the stakeholders, identifying the issues, the drivers, and you explain why did you come to that logic. Is it clear?
Yes, I want to point out that I do appreciate the case. It's just like I want to know what you are expecting, that's all, but thank you.
Yeah, well, normally in the exam, I will certainly be explaining to you what I'm expecting from you. Okay, bear with me 1 second. I'm trying to find if any participant just joined. Okay, not yet. All right, I'm also going to open the chat because I just lost it. I see that there is a question. Yeah, Mathieu, you do not need to memorize everything because I will allow you to have open book, so you have access to everything. I'm not going to verify if you are not accessing the document. So for the what I will check that, but if you have in front of you a list of all the processes of COBIT, I will have no problem with that. You don't have to memorize all the process of COBIT. I will not ask you what is BAI 09. You will have to say managed assets. No, I will not do that. However, probably for the multiple choice questionnaire, I will not allow you to have the books open, but for the exercise, I will have you, for the case, I will have no problem having you having access to all your slides. I will see how I will organize that, because frankly, I don't see how we can be able to supervise. I will expect you to be alone. I will expect you to keep the camera open. So those are some of the guidelines that I will be having for the examination. But I will check again how it is going to be organized. Thanks. We still have almost half an hour. I will be going through explaining to you how, I don't remember if I did that or not in the last, in the session 2, but I will go now through the explaining to you the each definition of a management objective. I will go back to our management objectives and tell you what we are talking about. If you remember, you certainly remember by now, I insisted so much on it. When we look at our management objectives, we have them structured into plan, align, plan, and organize, into build, acquire, and implement, into deliver service and support, into measure, evaluate, and assess. I would like you to know what is each one about. I would like you to ask you, when I ask you to identify what the issue is about, what management objective, you better have this in front of you and be able to look at the problem, read what the problem is, and verify that at the end of the day, the issue is related to improving quality, for example, APO 11. Or in that situation, they have problem with human resources, or in that situation, you have problem with managing projects, etc. Let us imagine that when in one organization, they have lost many assets and they do not have adequate management of their assets. Their assets can be any software application, that can be any computer, any mobile, any tablet, any series of IoT. It can be any major project that they are running, and those were wasted. They are wasted because, for example, they did not renew the licenses, or they did not adjust the maintenance of, they didn't maintain the systems adequately, so after 5 years they were completely obsolete and almost impossible to improve. So let us consider that managed assets is an objective that is related to alignment objective, that is related to enterprise goal, enterprise objective. So we come to management of assets, and let us see how can we adequately manage assets. For each one of those management objectives, and again, this is outside the scope, but I need to explain to you what we are talking about so you get an idea about what we are talking and what is each management objective is about. The management objectives, again, as its name implies, it involves management information and technology assets through their life cycle to make sure that their use delivers value at optimal cost. They remain operational, fit for purpose, and they are accounted for and physically protected. You see, so we are talking about how to ensure that those assets that are important for the organization, whatever the assets are adequately maintained, remain operational, and are controlled and protected. Ensure that those assets that are critical to support service capability are reliable and available, which means that if it is essential for me to keep my homepage alive and I decided to host it myself on my computer, then I have to ensure that my computer is always reliable and available. And available meaning that I may have a duplicate, a redundant service that can be taken on if my service is interrupted. Manage software licenses to ensure that the optimal number are acquired, retained, and deployed in relation to required business usage, and the software installed is in compliance with license agreements. The purpose of this is account for all IT assets and optimize the value provided by their use. We are talking about benefit realization, the value provided by the use. We're talking about risk avoidance, risk optimization, ensuring that they are reliable and available and we are not interrupting them. And we are talking about resource optimization, that we are using, spending the best investment in order to maintain them. So here as well, you see that those three major objectives, benefit, risk, and resource optimization, are identified here. In this situation, the fact that we manage assets, this is BAI 09, as we mentioned. This is related to the BAI, build, acquire, and implement. I'm telling you nothing new here. And I just read to you what it is about. You could have guessed it. I mean, you didn't need my sentence here and the purpose, because you understood what managed asset is. However, we can go one step further And we can see that enterprise goals that are related to this one are, the generic ones are quality of financial information, optimization of business processes. The alignment goals that are related are quality of technology related financial information, satisfaction of key stakeholders regarding the level. Here we see also that there are metrics. There are information indicators, performance indicators that are highlighted, so they help us each time define those indicators for each one of those if we are attaining the enterprise goals. Imagine the beauty of that. Imagine that we are able to define an indicator to help us, guide us, allow us to go to management and explain to management that we have adequately responded to enterprise goal or the alignment goal that we set to ourselves. This to show you how this framework is comprehensive. It really goes into much detail for allowing us managing our organization. We go one step further and we see, in order for us to implement adequate management of the assets, let me go a few steps further. I will come back to it. In order for us to ensure that we adequately managed our assets, we have to do series of activities. I call them sub-processes. They are sub-processes 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, which means if I need adequately to manage my processes, my assets, I need first of all to identify and record current assets. I need to identify those that are critical assets and say, wow, wait, those are critical assets. Those are really more important than others. How can I ensure that they are adequately well? I need to manage the asset life cycle. This asset needs to be replaced in 2 years' time. This applications need to maintained. This application needs to be maintained, and I need to improve on it this year, next year, and year after, otherwise it will become obsolete. I need to optimize asset value. What action can I do so the value of that application improve? How can I ensure that that system or that cloud service is adequately used and are using most of its value? How can I ensure that all those functionalities of that application that I purchased are used and bringing value? And finally, manage licenses. This is generic. Again, in your organization, in your situation, you may find additional activities that you should do in order for you to better manage assets. So in this example, we identified those different activities that are required for us to be sure that we are managing assets adequately. Again, let me push it further. This tool allows you to see what are the processes that helps you managing your assets and what information you get from those processes and what processes are expecting you to manage your assets and what information you need to do in order for them to adequately use the output that you produce. So we see what input you require for this process and what output you require from this process to other processes, to other management objectives. I'm really going into much details. Again, all what I'm showing you now is not required from you. If you highlight this or if you go into that detail in the exam, I will obviously be delighted, but it will not be required from you. Again, I go back to the beginning. If you remember, we started by saying manage assets, that example. What is it about? And what are the enterprise goals and the alignment goals that are required? And what are those alignment metrics that I could put in place? And I mentioned to you that it involves a series of activities. Identify and record current assets is the first one. The second one is manage critical assets. Yes, Laszlo, I will come back to this one. So on each one of those activities, sub-processes, sub-management objectives, we see that we require to go through the different activities. We are talking about different sub-processes that are related to that. For example, here, I mentioned to you, manage the life cycle. I mentioned to you, manage critical assets. I mentioned to you, identify and record current assets. For example, the identify and record current assets, which is related to BAI 09. BAI 09 is called management of objective called manage assets. The BAI 0901 is identify and record current assets. I hope you are following. It's very logical. It's very hierarchical. We are talking today about BAI 09 manage assets. And one of the first activities in the process phase that we have to do, we are here in process component, is to identify and record current assets. And if I need to identify and record current assets, again, I don't need them to explain to me. I exactly know what it is about. However, COBIT will say to me, in order to do that, you have to maintain an up-to-date, accurate record of all information and technology assets that are required to deliver services and that are owned or controlled by the organization, with an exception of future benefit, with an expectation, of future benefit, including resources with economic value such as hardware and software. It also tells us that we have to ensure alignment with configuration management and financial management of those assets, how much they are costing us, how we can have to adjust them. And example of metrics, performance indicators are the % of assets accurately recorded, for example. So I just mentioned to you that we have to, in order to look at the BAI 09 managed assets, we know what we are talking about, and we have to go through series of sub-processes in order to organize that. And those sub-processes are defined here, and there are series of activities that are required in those sub-processes. For example, in order for us to identify and record current assets, we need to identify all owned assets in an asset register. We need to identify legal, regulatory, and contractual requirements. We need to verify that the assets are fit for purpose, and we ensure adequate accounting for assets, and verify the existence of all owned assets by performing regular physical check or inventory. And we need to determine on a regular basis whether each asset continues to provide value, etc., etc. Again, what I'm talking about now are activities within that sub-process that is within the process called manage assets. You see the details, the level of details that exist. You see the beauty of that. If you go into an organization, imagine that you are fresh out of school. Imagine that I ask you, please go to an organization and using COBIT, please evaluate how much that organization is assessing their assets adequately. Because it's important for us to look at their assets. You will simply go through that checklist here and verify how much they do. How you will ask them, simply interview them and ask them questions. You will be able to go through that checklist and be able to be auditing those organizations, be able to assessing those organizations and checking how much are they capable of doing that activity. So you see the beauty of that. You are out of school and tomorrow and you'll be able to be an adequate people to verify the adequacy of governance within an organization. Or if your future employer will say to you, you are coming from ULB and you should be, you have gone through that IT governance course, so probably you are able to help us building an organization, because in this organization we are not adequately managing assets. You know how to do it, Absolutely, I know how to do it. I will structure it into 5 sub-processes: identify and record assets, etc., etc. And for this one, I will go through all those activities and I will build all those activities. I may not require to build all those activities, absolutely all of them, because this is too much work. I will start with capability level number 2, and then I will improve my maturity into capability level number 3 by implementing this one. And then I will go into capability level number 4, and I implement number 5 and 6 in a few years' time. But I will start this year with number 1, 2, and 3. And for each one of those sub-processes, I have the indicators on how to do it. Not only that, but each one of those sub-processes, for example, sub-process 1, identify and record current assets, I even have guidelines. I even can go and download additional documents, additional indicators, additional frameworks that guide me into telling me how to do it, and which chapter is specifically looking at that. So this is really very much helping into organization implementing adequate governance of organizations. It is really a jewel. So we have gone through the managed assets. We have gone through the reading what is typically defined into COBIT for every single management objective. And as I mentioned to you, every one of those management objectives are defined into various components. And we just browse together, we just look together at how is one of them, which is called managed assets, how the process is defined. But I will also browse with you for that specific process. I will go with you through those different other components. I will go with you through how they define which organization structure is required to manage assets, which principles, policies, information, culture, people, competencies, etc. I will do that in a second. The objective of me now, what I'm trying to do is showing you that for each one of those, for example, the managed assets, BAI 09, how this word here, it's 2 words here, 1 sentence, how that 1 sentence can be translated into a series of components to make it happen. And we just looked at one of those components, which was the process, and we'll be going through the others. In addition to the fact that we have defined those processes for the managed assets, those different sub-processes, those different activities, we have been looking at the component called process. But as we noticed, there are 6 other components. One of them is the component that is called organization structure. And in this example, it goes through the 5 domains. It goes through the 5 sub-processes, and for each one of those sub-processes, you will see who is typically in an organization accountable, responsible, consulted, and informed in relation to the different 5 sub-processes, which will guide us into implementing the adequate organizational structure. If I go into another component, which is called information flows, I see here, as I mentioned to you, for those different sub-processes, what information I require to input and I require to output from this management objective. So if I'm organizing a real environment, or if I'm auditing that environment, I will be able to identify the existence of that information. Azim, to respond to your question, and this is very interesting question, you asked me how much should I verify for each one of those capabilities that we are doing the adequate capability? Should I start reviewing 4? No. As you mentioned very well, I would start by verifying if they have done 1, 2, 3, because organization may not be yet in a level 4. If they are in level 4, I would say, wow, wonderful, proficiat, good for you. You are in level 4. But I will start checking my level 2, because I will verify if they are in level 2, okay. But if they are not in level 2, I will not even bother verifying that if they are in level 4. So yes, I will start by the lowest. Otherwise, I'm wasting my time. I will go and check if they are determining on a regular basis whether each asset continues to provide value. They don't even know what they are their assets. So obviously, as you mentioned very well, I need to start with evaluating if they are level 2. And if yes, I will go further. And if yes, I will go further. Thank you for the question. Very interesting question. I go back to my next component. I looked into the organization structure component, and I go into my information component, and I see what information is required. And I will, for each one of those sub-processes. And I will go for my next step. My next step is people, skills, and competencies, which means I will check how am I looking into people, skills, and competencies, and how can we expect any skill for asset management, for system installation and decommissioning, which means stopping the use of those, and how can we expect, what type of skills do we expect? You may not know what skills are or what skills framework is. There is a framework called Skills Framework for Information Age, SFIA. It's not version 6 now, it's version 7 or 8 if I'm not wrong. So in SFIA framework, which is a completely different tool than COBIT, you will see that they define a skill called ASMG, asset management, I suppose. And that's asset management will explain much, much more in detail than COBIT. What skills do you expect in order to do this? So this COBIT here will guide you in those other tools. And then we look at policies and procedures. And then we look at how can we manage assets in order, what policies we have to create in order for us to better manage assets, provide guidelines for asset life cycle management, asset protection measures, etc. If we look at the component culture, ethics, and behavior, we see how to establish a culture of how to identify a culture that identifies, assesses, and reports the relative economic and strategic value of assets. And if we look at service, infrastructure, and application, then we see that we may need to use a tool for managing assets. What I just did with you, I just went through one of the management objectives, and I remind you, for those who just arrived, that it is outside the scope of this course. I only wanted to show it to you for your information. I just went with you through all the details on how we define an asset. Imagine that we are not here, imagine that I did not go with you through the asset management, and imagine that I said to you, okay, one of those assets, one of those management objectives is called manage assets. I suppose that you would have understood, implied, what we are talking about by managed assets. And I suppose that if you try to imagine what kind of process, organization, structure, principles I have to put in place for me to manage assets, your logic, your common sense will guide you into that. But by going through the details, by going through, browsing with you through all the details, the description of COBIT, I wanted to guide you into highlighting to you what is important and how we define those. You may say to me, yes, thank you very much, but obviously what you showed us is not really very much nuclear science. It is a very common sense. Absolutely, it is common sense. And I imagine that if I would have asked you yourself to write this to me, some of you will do some good job and will say common sense. We know what we talk about managed assets. But I wanted to go through this into detail to show you that the extent, the detail to which we can go into defining asset. And if we are in an organization where we wish to apply adequate governance, we really can go so much into that detail. So this is how you can see a management objective can be defined. I imagine that if I ask you to give me an example on how to manage projects, how we manage analysis, requirement definition, how we manage design, solution identification and build, how we manage the IT change acceptance or project, you may be able to understand what it is about, or you may say, oh, based on that definition here, I really don't know what it is about. What I expect you at the end of this class, but I will, and I hope that you will be able to do that, is that you go through all those descriptions here and you please try to understand those. Try to see what they are about. I may be during the exam asking you, in the case, what it is about to implement, if we need to implement BAI03, Managed Solution Identification and Build. For that case, why Managed Solution Identification and Build could have helped us in that situation. So I would like to expect you to explain to me what it is about Managed Solution Identification and Build. So I would expect you at least to read that it means ensure agile and scalable delivery of digital products and services. Again, I don't care if you use those words. What I would like you to understand by that is that simply in an organization, we may need to be capable of identifying and building solutions, which means design and implement, develop, program. This is what we are talking about, which means that we are capable of implementing solutions, which means buying or developing software and implementing that software. When I ask you, I expect you to understand what is manage projects. Well, BAI 11, I expect you to say to me, well, it implies implementing project by creating what is necessary, looking at risk, building the different phases, ensuring that we have put some quality, that we delivered what is expected. This is for us what is managed projects. I will certainly not expect from you to go any detail that like the one we mentioned, but I still expect from you that you understand what each one of the 7 components can be related to those. When we analyze, Kevin asked, when we analyze a management objective, do we need to implement all the components? This is a very, very important question. Thank you very much, Kevin, for that question. If imagine that I ask you for our case or for real life situation, once you are active in an organization, and we ask you as an expert in IT governance, now that you have attended this class, I would like you to help me identify why are we in this organization unable to manage security or to manage risk or to manage portfolio or to manage innovation or to manage human resources. Please guide me. So you will say, okay, I'm going to see why aren't we adequately managing vendors, and you will go and assess which one of those components that are missing me in managing my vendors. Should I look at all of them? Ideally, I will look at all of them. Ideally, I will try to ask a question. Imagine that I'm asking you, you are the IT manager in that organization, or you are the stakeholder involved in that. And imagine that I will ask you, I'm here to evaluate how much are you managing vendors. can I ask you, first of all, I'm doing the audit now, I'm playing the role of doing the audit. Could you please tell me who is involved in organization, who in the organization is involved and is responsible for managing the vendor? Who else is working with him or with her? Who is doing the process? Are there any series of activities that they should do, sub-processes and activities that they define that systematically they should do in order for them to manage processes adequately, to manage the vendor adequately? Are there any principles, policies, and frameworks? What kind of information, what kind of document they have, what inventories they have in there? Do they have the list of vendors, external services? Do they have the list of services they expect from them? Do they have the list of contacts that are related to those? Do they have the list of deliveries? Do they have the list of the deficiencies that they have in the last months? Do they have the list of what we expect from them in the coming months, etc.? What is the behavior of each one of those? Did you write down which one is responsive, which one is bad, which one is doing it well, adequately, responding to our requirements, etc.? Do you have any idea on what competencies do we need, or do we miss, or do we already have internally in managing the supply and the vendors? Do we have any tool that we are doing? And based on the questions that you will be asking, Kevin, on each one of those components, you will have your idea. You will identify what is going good and bad. You will find out, oh, I have the feeling that something is going wrong here, because the information they gave me, they didn't even record what went wrong and what went well. They don't even record what is the supplier that is satisfactory and which supplier is not satisfactory, etc., etc. So this is how we will be able to look at each one of those and identify if we have a problem with our vendor management. I will ask, did they ask me to come here and check their vendor management processes? Why is it important for them that they ask me to spend my time on this? What are the issues? What are the problems? And then I will try to relate those components and the answers I received with the problems that they have highlighted. Any question based on that? Okay, thank you. So what we have done today, we have done in 2 hours an unbelievable crash course on governance of IT, enterprise IT. What we have done is we went from the basics. What are the 3 important issues that we have to keep in mind? Benefit, risk, and resources. How can we cascade our objectives? How can we, from those major drivers, identify enterprise goals, as well from the benefit, from the risk, and from the resources to alignment goals? And we will identify management and governance. Forget governance, I focus more on management objectives. And from those management objectives that we highlighted, for example, in our case, what are those 2, 3 that are important for us? And from those 2, 3, what are we expecting? What are the components that we need to improve on in relation to those objectives? And this is going to be the topic that I will expect you to do for the exercise I will document and send to you today. So if you do that, and if you have attended the whole class, some people arrived late, I hope you will be able to catch up. If you have attended the whole class, you will be able to understand what are we, how the whole process, how can we, what are we expected to do in order for us to master the situation in any component related to any domain, any management objective, and we will be able to assess and implement improvement on the governance of the enterprise. Why is that important? Because this is the most important activity within an organization. Because imagine an organization spending a lot of money, a lot of effort on developing systems, and yet they do not have adequate governance. So most of what they are doing can be wasted. And I gave you in the past examples on situations that I lived, where they wasted not thousands of euros, not 10,000 of euros, but millions of euros, because they simply were not able to manage well one or the other of those management objectives, and didn't manage all those related components. And in the Trinity chain case, you see that we are in a similar situation, and you will be able to pinpoint those issues. And in the exam, I will be also asking you to highlight those similar to the exercise I will ask you to do. I ask you to do the exercise personally. Please don't do it in groups, because at this time you will be verifying, proving to yourself that you understood. Yes, you can go and ask the group afterwards if you understood, and ask your relations, if your friends, your colleagues, if you did it well. And yes, you can adjust it and send it to me afterwards adequate, but I need you to correct it well. I don't want to see similar, very, very similar answers. I need you to prove to yourself. Again, I'm not going to quote it. I'm going certainly to give you a quote so you can see how well did you give it, if I manage the time, but I will not even promise you to quote them. I will give you some answers to guide you on them next week, but I will expect you before next week, before Wednesday, to give me, to send to me the results on a personal work in response to the questions that I'm going to ask you. And all those will be related to what we have done today. It is time. Any questions for the last 2 minutes? I expect to see you next week. Again, sorry for the 8 o'clock in the morning. I don't have a choice. And thank you for all those who arrived on time. And sorry for those who arrived late. Hopefully you will be able to catch up. And I will, again, I may not be able to go through all the emails that you sent to me. Please repeat here. I will be happy to stay later on this chat and repeat on this chat the questions that you asked me, if those are public questions. If you have any personal questions, send it to me in email again, so I will be able to respond to you. Yes, I defined the course that 7:30, because starting from 7:30 you can connect, but obviously the course is at 8 o'clock. The course was not at 7:30. And again, I will not be able to post I don't know if I recorded this class today, but I will check that. And in case I recorded it for myself, I will be able to post it. If in case I did not record it, I will not be able to post it, but I will be most probably recording the one of next week. Thank you very much. I will still here online in order to respond to any question you may have. I did not correct the slides. I simply quoted them. And based on the quote, you will see if you have done it adequately or not. I certainly do not have the time to correct all your answers. My objective, again, as I mentioned, Josephine, is ensure that you have understood the question and you are able to respond. So I would expect you to compare what I mentioned today and what I will be mentioning next week to what you have done. So I invite you, for example, to go back and look at what you have responded. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me questions in relation to your response of the exercise 0 and 1. However, as I mentioned, I was very much happy with the most of the responses, because most of the responses were adequate. If you don't have any objection, I would be happy to publish the results of everybody, so everybody can see what has been responded and compare with each other. Okay, I see that I sent it 7:30, and sorry for that. I should have sent it at 8. Okay. Oh, PM, not AM. Oh, I'm sorry for that. I will never manage that PM and AM thing. Sorry for those who could not attend today. So I see here that it was recorded. If it's recorded, I will put it on the. I will publish it, and I will allow you mention it to you, so you will be attending the class again. Sorry for that. Thank you, Gilles, anyhow, for the information. Okay, so if you don't have any other question, I thank you all for being here. I propose that you leave now, and I will see you then on the next week, last session on next week.